Hi everyone, this is Destiny from the Book Clinic. One of the most common questions I get asked by new authors is what is the difference between traditional and self-publishing and which one is better? While each of these forms of publishing is valid, they both are quite different and have their own benefits and drawbacks, which are important for you to know so that you can make an informed decision. So in this video, I'm going to break down the pros and cons of traditional and self-publishing, and then go through the steps that each of them requires. Let's jump in. So first, let's dive into the pros and cons of traditional publishing. Well, the first thing that is different between traditional publishing and self-publishing is that traditional publishing has gatekeepers, and this can be seen as a benefit or an obstacle depending on your point of view. The bad thing is that the barrier to entry is pretty high. Agents are known to reject the vast majority of manuscripts they receive. This isn't because they're just mean and trying to crush people's dreams, it's because really most manuscripts that are submitted to agents aren't ready to be published. So if you keep racking up a whole bunch of rejections and not getting a single request, that's probably a pretty strong sign that your story still needs work. This can be a great way to find out if your story is finished or not. The problem, however, is that agents' opinions are subjective. So I worked at a literary agency and I know firsthand that the vast majority of manuscripts agents receive are pretty terrible and not at all ready to be published. However, sometimes agents reject things not because the book is bad or because they didn't necessarily like it, but because they might have a book that's already too similar on their list. They might not really be looking for new clients. They might have liked the book, but not loved the book. And an agent has to fall in love with the book in order to feel comfortable representing it. It could be that the book blends genres, and so they don't know how to sell it. There could be a lot of reasons other than your book is bad for why you get rejected. Another downside of traditional publishing is how slowly it moves. My God, does it move slowly. It can take a long time, potentially years, to get signed by an agent. Then it could take years for an agent to sell one of your books to a publisher. Then it'll probably take 1 to 2 years from the time you get a book deal to the time your book is released. Though even that is being a little generous, sometimes it takes even longer than that. So if you're looking to get your book published in, say, the next year or two, traditional publishing might not be for you. This form of publishing also gives you significantly less control over your work. As a brand new debut author, you're probably not going to have much say on the cover design or the back cover blurb or the typesetting. It's only once people become very successful, probably best-selling authors that they are able to have more creative control over the work. It's also possible that an agent or an editor at a publishing house will want to change certain aspects of your book as a condition of them publishing. It's very, very common, pretty standard actually, to receive revisions as part of a publishing deal. If you think your book is absolutely perfect the way it is and you do not want to make any changes, then traditional publishing might not be the best route. It's also worth saying that traditional publishing gives you significantly lower profits. The way it works is you get a small advance, usually $2,000 to $10,000 for new authors, and you don't make any money off of your book until you've sold enough books to cover the amount of the advance. So for example, if you receive a $10,000 advance, you won't get any royalties until you've sold at least $10,000 worth of books. Once you start getting royalties, your agent takes out 15%. They also take up 15% of the advance. Don't get me wrong, they totally deserve this money because they're the ones who got you a book deal in the first place, and they essentially manage your career, doing a whole bunch of very specialized things that you cannot do on your own. So they deserve every penny that they get. However, this still means that at the end of the day, the amount you're taking home might be paltry unless you're one of these best-selling authors. If you want to be making 50% or more off of your books, traditional publishing is not for you. So you might be asking yourself, if traditional publishing has this many drawbacks, why does anyone do it in the first place? Well, there are two huge benefits. The first is the advance, like I mentioned earlier. $2,000 to $10,000 might not sound like as much as you would imagine a book deal would be, but it's a heck of a lot more than the vast majority of self-published authors make in their entire career. And if you don't sell enough books to cover the amount of the advance, you don't have to pay that money back. The second huge benefit is that if you get a book deal, the publishing house will set you up with a team of seasoned, experienced professionals. editors, cover designers, typesetters, formatters, a marketing team, and more. And all of this is 100% for free. With self-publishing, all the steps a traditional publishing company takes in order to release a book, you won't have to hire people to do that for you. And this is a perfect segue to get into the pros and cons of self-publishing. Self-publishing can have many benefits. The first is that there are no gatekeepers. There are absolutely no barriers to entry. So if your book's been rejected by agents hundreds of times, or if you can tell that your book wouldn't sell well in the traditional market, you can still get your book out there. The other great thing is that you have significantly higher profits. As I said before, with traditional publishing, the publisher takes about 70 to 80% of your profits, and the amount you get, 15% will be taken out by your agent. This can make it hard to make a living as an author if you don't sell very, very well. And the majority of authors, by the way, for both self-publishing and traditionally publishing, do not sell well. Self-published authors get to keep 40 to 60% of the profits from their book. There's no question that if the book sells well, you will be making more money self-publishing than traditional publishing. Self-publishing also offers a lot more control. If you don't want to make any changes to your book, or you want to make sure you're absolutely in love with your cover, this might be the best route for you. The big problem with self-publishing is the investment. The investment of time, money, blood, sweat, and tears. The only options are to do everything yourself, which I do not recommend, or to hire a team of professionals, which requires significant investment of money. Again, all the steps traditionally published books have to go through, self-published books should go through as well. I cannot stress this enough. If you want to self-publish, but you can't afford to hire a team of professionals, it is better to save up for years and wait in order to do it the right way than to try to DIY it. DIY books sell very, very poorly, and they rack up plenty of bad reviews. Readers deserve a polished product, and your book deserves its best shot at success. Another thing no one tells you about self-publishing is that the market moves much, much faster than traditional publishing. The successful self-published authors release a book every few months, or write a series and then release it all at once, or will write a series and then release a book every month for the next 6 months or so, basically blitzing. This is because readers love to binge read. If you only write a book every 1 or 2 years and you don't think you will be able to pull off the blitzing strategy, then self-publishing probably isn't the best market for you. It is very hard to make money as a self-published author when you write slowly. The idea is to pump out books consistently, which can be difficult if you have a full-time job. The most important thing to realize about self-publishing is self-publishing a book is a business, and you need to treat it like one. Doing it right requires a lot of work on an ongoing basis. If you treat it like a hobby, you're not going to see much success. Now, if your only goal for your book is to get it out there and you don't care about sales, then this isn't a problem for you. But if you have a full-time job that's already stressing you out and you're not going to have much time to manage your self-publishing career, you might want to go with traditional publishing, where you only have to focus on the writing. So let's talk about the steps that traditional publishing and self-publishing consist of. Traditional publishing is a simpler process than self-publishing, so this should be quick and easy. So the first step after you finish writing your book is to submit it to agents. In order to do that, you need to write a query letter. What is a query letter? I'll go more in depth in a future video, but a query letter is basically a pitch letter. You send it out to agents trying to explain the premise of your book in a unique, colorful, and engaging way. It typically is one introduction paragraph where you have housekeeping details like genre, word count, and intended audience. Then 1 to 2 paragraphs are the pitch itself, where you explain the premise of your novel up to the inciting incident. And then you have a short biography paragraph where you give the agent a little bit of information about yourself. So make sure that you either hire a professional, or if you're going to write it yourself, that you get lots of feedback on it and revise until it is perfect. Once you have your query letter in hand, it's time to find some agents to submit to. Now, there are a lot of good resources out there. One of them is manuscriptwishlist.com. It's an excellent resource where agents list the types of books they're most looking forward to reading. This way you can find agents who are looking for exactly the type of book that you've written. You can filter the results according to what genre people represent or according to other criteria. And this way you can laser focus and find the agents who are most likely to find your manuscript interesting. On Twitter, agents and editors, when they're putting out a tweet describing something they'd like to see in their slush pile, they will typically put the hashtag MSWL. If you go to the MSWL website, you can look up agents by name and it catalogs all the tweets in which they have put that hashtag. So you can very easily sift through to see if the agent is looking for something that you've written. Lastly, another great way to find agents is to make a list of your favorite authors within your genre, and then look in the acknowledgement pages or on Google in order to find who their agent is. This is great because a lot of writers write the type of books they like to read. So if an agent represents one of your favorite authors, there's not a small chance that they might also be interested in your book as well. Plus, this way you can put in the beginning of the query letter that you're a fan of one of their authors, which might make them pay more attention to your query letter. After completing your amazing query that perfectly captures the essence of your novel, it's time to polish your sample pages. Now, to be clear, the entire book should be polished, but you want to add an extra shine to your opening chapters. I recommend polishing all the way up to chapter 5, as literary agency submission guidelines will vary. Some will only want the first 5 pages, some will want the first 3 chapters, or maybe even more than that. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for every situation. Again, agency guidelines differ, so make sure you read them and follow them to the T. If they only want the first page, only send the first page, even if everybody else asks for the first 3 chapters. If you do not follow the submission guidelines, it's a quick way to get thrown into the rejection pile. Remember that your query and your sample pages should be standardized 12-point Times New Roman fonts and formatted correctly. Make sure there's no funny business. If an agent likes your query and sample pages, then they'll probably request more material. This can be either a partial or the full manuscript. Once they read that, they will either reject you, give you an offer of representation, which is every writer's end goal, or they will give you a revise and resubmit, in which case they will tell you what they thought wasn't working in the book, and then you have a chance to revise using their guidelines and bringing the book back to them. Once you get that coveted offer of representation, you have an agent. You'll probably edit and revise with them before she starts sending it off to publishers. So step 2 is the agent sells your book. An agent's job is to sell your novel to a publisher. He or she has a giant network of connections within the publishing industry, and they will keep pitching your book to editors until at least one bites. If more than one publishing house really loves your book, then the book will go to auction, where they can try to outcompete each other with best terms until you pick the one that gives you the best offer. Once you choose one, break out the champagne and celebrate because you have a book deal and you're going to be published. Step 3 is editing the book. After getting the book deal, you will most certainly be revising the book with the editor at the publishing house. This can take 6 months or a year. It differs depending on the book and the situation. After you're done with that, you just wait patiently while it crawls through the rest of the publishing process, having to make decisions every now and then the book gets released. Then it's time for the hard work of marketing. So now on to the steps with self-publishing. As you can see, traditional publishing is pretty simple. It's a lot harder to do than it sounds, but it's not a very convoluted process. Self-publishing is a lot more involved and has a lot more steps. None of these steps can be skipped without seriously hurting your book's chances at success. Remember, if you want your book to be at the same level as traditionally published books, you have to go through all the processes that traditionally published books go through. So step 1 is editing. I cannot stress this enough. Professional editing is an absolute must if you're self-publishing a book. You'll probably want to budget enough for at least 2 or 3 rounds of editing. You'll probably want to do a round of developmental editing where you and your editor strengthen the novel on a story structure level. Then you'll want to do copy editing, which is when the editor goes through improving readability and flow, looking for grammar errors, weird syntax, and typos. Lastly, there's proofreading, which is where the editor goes through looking for any typos or anything off that might have slipped through previous rounds of editing. You cannot professionally edit your book yourself. I don't care if you're great at finding typos, if you were an English major in college, or even if you're a professional editor yourself. I'm a professional editor, and I hired another professional editor to edit my manuscript. It's impossible to look at your own work objectively. After staring at the same manuscript for months or possibly years, you'll be blind to your own flaws and typos that are right in front of your face. Also note that beta readers and critique partners are not a substitute for professional editing. While these people can give you helpful feedback, they do not have the same level of expertise as a professional. Editing is a big investment, so make sure you do your research and hire an editor who actually has expertise in the area and is worth the money you'll be paying them. The second step is typesetting. Typesetting is basically the way books are formatted. There are special guidelines for how to deal with widows, orphans, hyphens, margins, and a bunch of other elements. In fact, you probably didn't even know what some of those words meant, which is a sign that you should not be typesetting your own book. Typesetting ensures reading your book is as pleasant and easy for your reader as possible, and that it actually looks like a book and not a long Word document. The third step is cover design. Now, we all know that readers totally judge books by their cover. A bad cover will scare readers off, while a good cover will entice someone to pick it up. It's important for the cover to be unique and eye-catching, while also fitting in perfectly with the other books in this genre. This is a delicate balance. However, the great thing about self-publishing is that not only can you handpick your cover designer, you can keep having covers produced until you find one that you fall in love with. The back cover of the book should contain the author's name and bio, the description blurb, the barcode, and reviews and testimonials by published authors or professional reviewers. The spine typically has the book title, the author's name, and the publisher's logo. Step 4 is creating the jacket, blurb, and description. This is your book's metadata, which is essentially all the description information for your book. This involves doing research and finding highly searchable keywords and phrases. You want your book title and description to contain these keywords. Your description should be fine-tuned to pique a reader's interest. It should explain the premise of your novel in an exciting and or unique way that evokes your story's tone. If you do this yourself, I recommend reading a lot of blurbs from books in your genre. You can find them really easily on Amazon. A last note, you want to make sure that your description is evergreen. So try to avoid phrases like coming out soon or out next month. The fifth step is getting an ISBN and a BISAC code. ISBN is an acronym for International Standard Book Number. It's an identification number that's recognized around the world, and that's necessary if you want your book to be sold by booksellers, retailers, or wholesalers. I recommend purchasing this before getting a cover designer, as it needs to be included in the back barcode. You'll need a different ISBN for each format your book is in: hardcover, paperback, and ebook. Some self-publishing platforms offer their authors a free ISBN, but I recommend purchasing them on your own. A BISAC code specifies what your book is about, including the topic, genre, and theme. Booksellers and retailers need it in order to determine which category your book should be in, both in stores and on their website. Step 6 is publishing. There are many self-publishing platforms to choose from. Some of the most popular are Kindle Direct Publishing, Ingram Spark, and Barnes & Noble Press. Each one offers different prices and features, so make sure you do your research before committing to them. These platforms should walk you through the next steps necessary to use them, so I won't go into detail here as specifics differ. Step 7 is distribution. Very important. Book distribution is the process through which your book is sent to booksellers and retailers. There are numerous book distributors such as Ingram Spark, Draft to Digital, among others. You can either deal with platforms individually and directly, which typically leads to a higher royalties per unit sold, or you can use an aggregator to simplify the process. An aggregator allows you to upload your book to one dashboard through which it's distributed to other platforms. Note that using an aggregator doesn't give you as much control over your metadata as when you're dealing with platforms directly. When looking for a distributor, make sure that they're easy to use, cost-effective, reliable, and secure. This is a very important step, so make sure you do thorough research before taking any action. Our 8th and final step is marketing. How well you accomplish this can make or break your book. You can have the most amazing, well-written, original novel of all time, and if you don't market it well, no one will ever know it exists. I think it's definitely worth hiring a marketing professional to help you come up with a strategy. If that's out of the question, make sure you at least cover the marketing basics. For one, you're going to need a website, full stop, period. This gives you instant credibility while also allowing you to engage with your audience. It's basically a business card for the 21st century. You should also make social media accounts, take webinars, and generally try to build an active following. You don't need to be on every social media platform. I recommend picking 2 or 3 that you can actually be active and engaged on. And you should pick whichever platforms your target audience is most likely to use. You could also start a YouTube channel, a blog, or a podcast to promote your book. Now, mind you, make sure whatever content you're creating is valuable to your audience. No one wants to hear someone just drone on about their unpublished book for 30 minutes straight, but you can use it to plug your work and gain new readers. I will probably do a more in-depth article on marketing in the future. It'll probably be on my website, but these are at least the basics. So which one is better, traditional or self-publishing? Well, the answer is neither. I sometimes see people who choose to self-publish denigrating those who traditional publish and vice versa. There is no best, just what's best for you. Each of these routes is perfectly valid. Your decision should revolve around how much time, money, and effort you're willing to invest in the process. I hope this has been illuminating for you. If there's any more questions about publishing or writing that you may have, feel free to put them in the comments. And as always, happy writing.